hopefully at the end of this year we'll have some time to, well, I should rewrite some songs, and we'll have time to work them out and go into a studio.
In the spring of '82, the Pretenders were finally finished with the most brutal tour of their career and ready to start work on a new album. But their lives were about to change drastically. Chrissy, Martin, and Jimmy had a meeting in London to discuss the band's future. Pete Farndon was not invited. First, Chrissy had an announcement. She was pregnant with Ray Davies' child.
I told them I was 3 months pregnant. You know, which was kind of like a whole separate meeting in itself when you think about it, because that was really going to affect the future of the band.
Well, we both fell off the sofa laughing, but it was cool. She was worried that we wouldn't sort of understand or something, but we were close for it.
The band then talked about their problems with Pete Farndon. Jimmy told Chrissy and Martin he would quit the band if Pete didn't go. Pete Farndon was fired.
Pack it up!
Certainly firing Pete, to me, was the hardest thing. You know, it's because this guy had started the band with me and had been loyal to the group, and I knew he loved the group, and he was very, very dedicated to it. And he was going off the rails, and he was just pushing us and testing us. You know, it's almost like a test of friendship. But the music was really suffering for it. If we hadn't got rid of Pete, Jim would have gone.
Let's show this big boy. You've got to be cool, so be kind.
The Pretenders' plans came to a dead halt 2 days after Pete Farndon was fired. On June the 16th, 1982, Chrissy got a call from manager Dave Hill, telling her the news that she least expected to hear. James Honeyman-Scott was dead.
I have to report another unfortunate casualty of the rock and roll lifestyle. James Honeyman-Scott, guitarist for the Pretenders.
Leading guitarist and songwriters James Honeyman-Scott died at the age of 25.
Who died in his sleep in a friend's London flat due to suspected drug overdose.
James Honeyman-Scott died at the age of 25.
He's gone 2,000 miles.
Jimmy actually just got back from America. He'd been playing with the Beach Boys, who we idolised. He just got back from the West Coast. He looked better than I did, really. There's a photograph. He looked great. And it was just like that. A very talented bloke.
I miss you.
The coroner reported that James Honeyman-Scott had died in his sleep of heart failure due to an intolerance for cocaine. After 2 world tours filled with the rock and roll lifestyle he had always wanted, Honeyman-Scott's body had simply given up.
You know, he wanted to be a rock star. And he was, but not for long. In fact, he wasn't even a rock star long enough for him to ever enjoy it.
Chrissy and Martin went to Jimmy's funeral in London. Pete Farndon came to pay his respects, full of resentment towards his former bandmates. In less than a week, the Pretenders had gone from a band of 4 to 3 to 2. Chrissy and Martin went into the studio and recorded a testament to Jimmy.
I found a picture of you. Oh, what hijacked my world at night.
You get so many asps coming backstage, you know, in L.A., man. You know, their little packets of cocaine, using it as a calling card. And Jim used to, these jerks used to follow him around, you know. He loved it. He couldn't say no, and these people prey on you. Let him try to get backstage to one of my gigs now.
Well, as I stand here today, knowing it deep in my heart, they'll fall to ruin one day for making us part.
Back on the Chain Gang became the band's biggest American hit. There was no question the Pretenders would carry on. The night before he died, Jimmy spoke to guitarist Robbie McIntosh about joining the Pretenders on their next tour. Now Robbie came in as Jimmy's replacement. Bassist Malcolm Foster completed the new Pretenders. The band started working on some new songs, but soon Chrissy found herself resenting the newcomers.
Well, on the one hand, I was very grateful they were there, and I was very pleased with what they were doing and impressed. And then on the other hand, I just resented them. I resented them The first photo session we had to do was very difficult. I didn't think, what business did they have with us being the Pretenders? There was a really weird, mixed up, irrational emotion I had about it.
Chrissy didn't let her resentment or her pregnancy slow the band's progress. In the winter of 1983, she gave birth to her daughter, Natalie. Becoming a mother inspired Chrissy's writing and changed her priorities. From then on, family came first.
To hell with the band. That was always a secondary thing at that point. This thing was important. I was willing to sacrifice everything for that. But at the end of the day, you can't sacrifice the thing that you love, whatever it is.
The Pretenders seemed to be back on track, but they were in for another shock.
Another phone call from Dave Hill. In fact, that was short and sweet. I just picked up the phone and he said, Farndon.
I've been wondering about you didn't see.
In April of 1983, Pete Farndon was found dead in his bathtub with a needle sticking in his arm. He had drowned after injecting a lethal dose of heroin.
And the only time that you come clean is when you're talking to your buyer.
Pete's death closed the book on the original Pretenders. 4 years after they started, half the band was dead.
'Cause you hurt me.
Less than a month after Pete's death, the new Pretenders were welcomed by 200,000 fans when they made their live debut at the US Festival.
With the new band, Robbie and Malcolm there, it's brought the band together as a group. So we're going to finish the album off as soon as we can and return.
In January of 1984, they released Learning to Crawl. It became the group's most successful album.
Trying to find it. I'm standing in the middle of the night with my face behind me.
The album reflected the life and death struggles Chrissy had endured in the last year and revealed a mature songwriter with her hope intact.
Come on now. Middle of the road, yeah.
Did you ever think that you wouldn't get the Pretenders going again? Oh, the thing is, one of those situations, you don't really think about things like that, about the band at the time, you just think about carrying on, or not carrying on. You don't really think about anything, you just go ahead and do what you think's natural.
What do you want the band to achieve in the immediate future?
I don't know, I think as long as we're all enjoying ourselves, we'll just carry on, It's the same as anything. You only do things if you really like doing it, in this business.
The tour schedule that followed was as rigorous as the first two Pretenders tours. But this time the band enjoyed high-profile perks, cushy hotels, and MTV sponsorship. Drug and alcohol abuse were out. The band now brought along spouses and kids. But touring with an infant was tough on Chrissy.
I had to go to a gig the other night. My baby's teething, and she's screaming at the top of her lungs. I was absolutely shaken by it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to leave her. I didn't want to do the show. This isn't going to work. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this tour. I finally got back to the hotel. The girl was looking after the baby. She said, we've had a great... As soon as you left, she stopped crying. We've had the best evening ever. So the next day, I was all like, let's go. Believe me, this is still a hot rock and roll outfit, even if for old moms and dads.
The new band's performances had an energy like they'd never had before.
I remember playing one night and seeing her. She was lying on the floor, on her back, singing, screaming at the microphone. And we came on stage and she told me that was the first time she'd enjoyed being on stage. After all those gigs we did, and she never enjoyed it. And she she really got off, and you could see it.
Chrissy's confidence was spurred by the new love in her life, Jim Kerr of Simple Minds. In Jim, Chrissy found someone who not only supported her career, but who valued family as much as she did.
Show me the meaning of the word.
Chrissy broke off her troubled relationship with Ray Davies. After only 3 days of courtship and 3 months of phone conversations, Chrissy Hine married Jim Kerr in a secret ceremony in New York City.
No one knew it because we got in one of those horse-drawn carriages with this Unitarian minister that I found over the phone. Even the guy who was, driving the carriage didn't know we'd been married, let alone who we were. And we just said, okay, thanks. We went back to the hotel.
Their honeymoon was a Pretenders' Simple Minds world tour.
We had to open up for someone. And I think, there's not a lot of better bands than Pretenders, even though I'm a little biased.
It was a great time for the newlyweds. Both their bands were at the peak of their popularity, but something wasn't right within the Pretenders. Martin and Chrissy never talked about the deaths of Jimmy and Pete. They kept a stiff upper lip and enjoyed all the success their friends never lived to see. Every time the two original Pretenders went on stage together, there was an unspoken resentment and survivor's guilt.
I couldn't be happier. We've got, a very good record, we've got a very good band, and we've got a very good tour. So, what more can you say?
The trauma was, it was just starting to wear on both of us.
That was a pretty mixed up time. Looking at it in retrospect, I was having a hard time, but it didn't look like it.
By the end of the tour, Martin and his wife Tracy had a new baby. Chrissy and Jim were also expecting a child. The future looked bright for Chrissy Hine. She had succeeded in rebuilding and catapulting her band to the greatest success it had known. But the Pretenders' glory was built on tragedy. Chrissy Hine, who was always fiercely honest, felt estranged from her band and from her own success. The Pretenders were heading for another crash. They just didn't know it yet.